Well, welcome everybody to geohug, and I am so excited for today's session. I'm thrilled that we've got Alex Dorsch and Morgan Frejabise with us today, and we're diving into the untold story of behind Chalice Mining's Gonneville discovery, just 45 minutes from Perth CBD. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. I'm very, very honored that you've decided to share the whole story with geohug. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Jessica. It's good to see, good to be here.
Yeah, it's so good. So before we do get stuck into the session, I was just super keen to learn more about how your career took you both to making a discovery, what's happened since, some favorite pet rocks, all the good stuff before we dive in. So yeah, Alex, I know that you've got a somewhat unconventional path into resources. How did you end up in mining?
Yeah, I should probably first say the disclaimer that I'm a bit of an imposter here on geohug as a non-geologist. So,
Me too.
Don't take offence, but yeah, I grew up sort of with a bit of exposure to small companies and sort of the exploration space in both minerals and oil and gas, like as a kid, and then followed sort of an oil and gas career initially, drilling sort of exploration holes out in the Cooper Basin and offshore Australia off the northwest coast. And then was fortunate enough to spend a couple of years with McKinsey, the management consultants, and sort of did a global tour there, working for a lot of different countries and continents, and then was fortunate to meet Tim Goyder, the founder of Chalice, back in 2017. So that's when I really sort of, I guess, took that interest in exploration sort of to the next level, and was lucky enough to meet Tim, Kevin Frost, our exploration manager at the time, and obviously Morgan, our senior geologist at that time. So, and I've just got I guess, a passion for, exploration, and yeah, very much enjoy, running a team of geologists and a team of sort of big picture thinkers and creative thinkers. And yeah, it's been obviously a fantastic journey, since the discovery, but yeah, just a highly rewarding one as well. So that's sort of, yeah, my background, and technically speaking, again, I'm an engineer and a finance degree. So for the real technical geos out there, maybe go easy on me.
That's what Morgan's here for, right?
Exactly.
So you're Morgan, you've got more than 17 years as an exploration geo. What got you into geology?
It's a mix of always been there, and a mix of serendipity, I guess. Always been there because I think when you're looking in the back mirror, you realize I had always had a rock collection at home. So I guess the rock collection is obviously a proof that I was already into rocks. But originally I was good in science, I guess, in school. So originally I went into biology in university in the first year, and then I hated it after the first year. I realized, oh, that's not for me. And I had 1 unit of geology, and that's the way it works in the French university, and I really loved it. And so in the second year, I actually went full on. I took all my units into geology, and then the rest is history. And Toulouse University in France, we're doing the WAXI program, which was in between Perth and Toulouse, which is this amazing program in West Africa, led by Mark Jessel, which was one of my lecturers in Toulouse. And yeah, so I guess the connection with Perth and Australia was quite good at that time, and especially mineral exploration. So the rest was pretty simple. Most of my colleagues went to Canada and Quebec because they were a bit lazy to learn English, and I decided to go where the sun was a bit warmer.
Quite different to Quebec, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that is very cool. And so what has life looked like since being involved in a big discovery?
Look, it's been great. I mean, yeah, it's certainly nice to have one rather than not, put it that way. Look, we've had sort of ups and downs. We're not immune from market sort of cycles and commodity price cycles, but yeah, look, it is such a unique discovery that it's sort of hard not to really be technically and commercially very excited about it. And it is a bit of a sort of science experiment even from the beginning. to really understand it, because it is such a unique beast. But yeah, highly rewarding experience, and obviously we've built a company really off the back of it, or a real company. But obviously we'll talk to that in the lead up to that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear it. Did you both bring some of your favorite pet rocks with you today?
We brought a few things. So for those who sort of curious as to what some of the Gonneville massive sulfide or semi-massive sulfide looks like, there's sort of some of the nice polished specimens here, sort of from, as those who recall, sort of in the middle of the deposit, there's quite a rich sort of lens of massive and sort of matrix sulfide, and there's some fantastic sort of textures. A bit hard to see on the camera, apologies, but yeah, some matrix textures there that are very sort of unique, and I guess some people refer to that as our Norilsk rock, because they're sort of sort of those types of spinifex textures are seen in Norilsk as well. So yeah, that's my sort of pet rocks, I guess, the valuable stuff.
And so my bedside table were all massive sulfides, pretty much, Ducton and Jaguar. But I thought he was going to bring, I knew he was going to bring those Chalice massive sulfides. So I brought something different. It's zinwaldite, which is a lithium-bearing mica into pegmatite, sort of like feldspar, microcline, sort of rock. And the rock and the minerals is pretty cool. It's got this rosette shape and textures, and fan-like radial purpley color lithium mica. So it's pretty cool. But more than the rocks, it's more the way I found the rock. It was quite funny. We were actually sneaking around a place called Londonderry and trying to do some fossicking, and we were obviously not allowed. It was all these signs that we ignored, and I'm not very proud of it, but this is what we do. And we stumbled into a prospector that was pretty angry, and we had his dog barking at us, and he had a gun in the back of his ute. So we're not very proud and not very confident at the time. And but typical Australian story, you just have a bit of a yarn, and straight away the temperature went down, and we found stuff in common. And long story short, we ended up being best mates within a few minutes, and he gave us a tour around, and he actually shown us, and that's how I got the rocks, because he showed us the best spot. And it was caretaking for the owner, and it was the actual discovery of the mana discovery, the lithium discovery for Breaker Resources, which is a fantastic discovery, one of those rare, genuine new discovery of lithium deposits, not just rediscovery. It was actually a genuine greenfield discovery, and he gave me the whole story and the photos of the story, and that was a very good moment. I had a very good moment with him. Stephen Hargus, that was his name. So yeah, thumbs up for him.
That is brilliant. I love that. That is awesome. Well, thank you both so much again for being here. I cannot wait to hear this story. So thank you for sharing it with us. If you want to share your screen, and we'll get stuck into it.
So I'll I guess talk to a bit of the corporate context first, without boring all the technical people in the audience here, hopefully. And then Morgan will spend the time sort of talking about the lead up to and the activities, leading up to the discovery. So I'll bore everyone here for a minute just with the context for those who don't know anything about Chalice or our project. So we're based in WA. We made a world-class discovery in 2020 called the Gonneville deposit. It's a very large open pittable orthomagmatic sulfide deposit, and the resource is quite considerable for an open pit deposit. 17 million ounces of 3E, which is palladium, platinum, gold, 960,000 tons of nickel, 540,000 tons of copper contained in resource. So it's quite a unique sort of mix of metals. It's more of a PGE-rich orthomagmatic sulfide than most people are used to in WA. We've invested about $225 million in the discovery since 2020. So we've also really sort of worked through a lot of different flow sheet and processing sort of options over the last few years And we're basically, most of the way through a pre-feasibility study now, which is going to come out sort of towards the end of this year. And on the back of the discovery, we staked a large land holding in the West Yilgarn. Obviously, Morgan was the one really to recognise that the western edge of the Yilgarn Craton was very poorly explored for these orthomagmatic nickel copper PGE systems. But we've sort of also got Boddington Gold Mine on the western side of the Yilgarn, and we've made some really interesting sort of breakthroughs there in sort of the geological understanding, particularly of the southwest terrain. So we're sort of looking for gold copper hydrothermal orogenic gold copper systems, nickel copper PGE systems as well over that terrain. We've got a great balance sheet, which I'll talk to in a minute, and we've got really a really dedicated and invested team. So we're real, as I said, passionate about exploration and creating sort of mining projects from humble beginnings. So this is the Gonneville resource sort of in a plan view on the left and a sections or a pseudo section sort of 3D view on the right. As you can see, it's a 1.9 kilometer by 1 kilometer footprint, and the resource extends all the way down to 1.1 kilometers where the actual host intrusion, the Gonneville intrusion, is still open, and it's still about 600 meters thick at that depth. So it's a very significant body of mineralization, 660 million tons of resource, about a 0.8 gram per ton sort of precious metal content, and then a bit of nickel, copper, cobalt as well, which is very important, for in terms of byproduct credits to go against PGE production. But yeah, it's a significant discovery. Like I said, we made a significant investment in it since the discovery. We drilled 1,200 drill holes in the space of about 3.5 years. So we weren't sort of mucking around either. After we found it, we really wanted to define the resource very, very quickly. And as you can see there, it's very well defined near surface, and it's a very shallow deposit, effectively a small thin layer of oxide sort of transitional material. But then you're into sort of hypogene, fresh sulfide, and very high grade fresh sulfide mineralization from a depth of about 40 meters below surface. So very unusual to see those sorts of high grades as well in the core of the deposit, so close to surface. So that's the sort of the quick intro. But I guess the Chalice story is quite an interesting one, because really Morgan and I were sort of standing on the shoulders of previous successes, and really special mention here to Tim Goyder, the founder and I guess mentor of both of us. Tim set up the company back in 2006, sort of chasing gold in the Higginsville sort of area around Norseman. He did a number of very, very savvy deals, sort of trading in and out of gold projects over the course of about 10 years. And that really set us up with a balance sheet, which is very, very unusual for a junior company. So when I came on board in 2017, we had about $45 million in cash. And at that time, sort of post those very successful transactions in Northeast Africa and Canada, we really sort of had spent a lot of time and really sort of kicked the tires on a number of projects, as you do when you're sort of looking or deciding how to spend $40 to $50 million. And I guess we got a little bit frustrated sort of in 2017, 18, where we just weren't seeing a great deal of quality acquisition opportunities. And I'm sure sort of everyone who's in the business development space agrees that just high quality mineral or larger scale resources projects in good jurisdictions or workable jurisdictions are incredibly rare. So we got a little bit frustrated by that, and we sort of started to pivot to more generative, and we became more of a generative house in 17 and 18. And we also exited out of Canada in 2019. We were sort of exploring in the Val d'Or area in the Abitibi Belt, and we just felt we should have more of a focus on Australia. And Morgan will talk to this in detail, but we had a bit of a left field first hole discovery at Gonneville in 2020. And it was interesting because it was sort of in the real early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we we were as surprised as anyone to see sort of the discovery hole come back at 19 meters at 2.6% nickel, 1% copper, and 8.4 grams palladium. Funnily enough, a lot of us had to sort of Google what palladium was at that time because we weren't too familiar with the metal, but clearly it was an extraordinary type of discovery hole and very, very unusual in that palladium content. We staked the surrounding areas as well as those areas sort of north and south along the western margin of the Yilgarn. And then our focus had been at that time our Pyramid Hill gold project in Victoria. So we actually spun out that Pyramid Hill project into a new company called Falcon, which I remain on the board of. And then through 2020 and to 2023, we raised in a very, very positive market in a very high commodity price environment. We raised 320 million Australian dollars to basically progress the project to FID, and that was incurring very, very low levels of dilution to our shareholders. So we were very fortunate to have a real tailwind at that time. And I mentioned, obviously, by 2024, the resource was quite significant. So really we were set up for success by our predecessors, if you like. We sort of did a pivot in sort of 2017, 18, and then, we really had, as it says there, the combination of, high quality geoscience, the right technical talent, but also risk appetite and of course, a little bit of luck as well. You've got to be in the right place at the right time. So yeah, we were very fortunate to sort of come up with that world-class discovery in 2020. So, what I'm probably about to say is probably going to be obvious and quite basic to most people, but I think what we observe is that even though these sort of corporate basics are quite simple and easy to follow, I guess we observe that actually not many companies sort of follow the rules or best practice in exploration as junior companies. So we wanted, to put in the foundations for people like Morgan to really to be able to go out and pursue sort of higher risk, greenfield frontier exploration, but do it in a sustainable way where you're not just incurring dilution as a shareholder. So there's 4 sort of topics to touch on. First and foremost was sort of the values. When I came in, I'd seen, I guess, a real sort of technical group with immense talent, and I wanted to make sure we maintained, I guess, timelines and deadlines. So we included urgency as a core value, and obviously ownership. Our founder, was very, very strong in terms of instilling an owner's mindset, and we operated very flat. So Morgan was routinely talking to me, talking to the board. There was no sort of hierarchy. It was very much a flat meritocracy. And I used the saying there from Peter Drucker, the famous management guru. He said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." So there's no point having a great strategy as an exploration company and then going and sort of being overbearing on the team or sort of putting in hierarchies on the team, which prevents people doing what they do. So or doing what they do best and what they're passionate about. So I think we had the right values, which set up the right culture of, passionate sort of, driven exploration, but with also a very commercial focus. And then risk appetite, we had, a board, a founder, a board, and a management team that really understood frontier exploration. We really understood the numbers game. There are 1,000 frogs to kiss to come across one princess. So we all sort of understood that. But, we even though we had a high risk appetite, we weren't sort of dishing out the funds easily. We rigorously tested all ideas and sort of, we were routinely discussing ideas for where to drill holes, where to target new areas. And we had robust debate on that. And even when we were sort of deciding around the discovery hole for Gonneville, we were discussing, should we be the ones to self-fund that drill hole, given the context of the pandemic that was emerging at the time, where we fortunately didn't go that direction, but we were testing ourselves to make sure, should we be the ones to fund what ended up being a very, very cost-effective and low-cost discovery, mind you, but But just we had that high risk appetite, but it was moderated by sort of commercial focus. And then I guess myself as a non-geologist coming in as a CEO of a junior exploration company, that was that was slightly unconventional. And I guess what I like to think I brought to the team was sort of alignment on strategy, and we were very specific about what we wanted. We had sort of the business development acquisition strategy alongside sort of a generative strategy, and we had really a base and precious metals focus. And we were sort of fortunate that we did get some exposure to nickel and cobalt and PGMs, obviously, because they ended up being very, very strong markets for the subsequent sort of 4 years. And we really sort of, I guess, took the emphasis off external opportunities coming in the front door, and we really turned that into sort of a generative focus. We really said to the team, Morgan, Graham, Henry, Kevin, go out and find opportunities and generate things bottom up. So that ended up being a smart decision, just given that we stumbled upon Gonneville, obviously. But we also sort of aligned, and we had that business model well understood. So and I appreciate, again, this is probably very obvious to a lot of people, but if you want to do frontier sort of greenfield exploration, in our mind, you really need to have a big prize. There is no point sort of chasing small scale discoveries when you're sort of risking a lot going into new areas. So the prize needs to be commensurate to the risk involved, and we really preferred to have always larger land holdings, so that if we did make one discovery, then that could potentially open up a camp or a district of sort of follow-on discoveries. And we were very deliberate not to chase sort of smaller scale discoveries. Once we'd tested an area for sort of tier 1 scale deposits, we were quick to move on. And once we were confident sort of the large scale concepts and targets had been tested, we held ourselves back from drilling further and spending more money. So that was the sort of it's not an exhaustive list, but some of the sort of non-technical factors that I think were contributed to the discovery as well. And so on a bit of a lighter note, I guess the discovery and the Julimar project that Morgan staked, had very, very humble beginnings. It was staked in early 2018, which Morgan will talk to in detail. It was only 70 kilometers from Perth, and quite unbelievably very, very poorly explored, and yeah, it was a very oddity type of occurrence to see something of that scale and that sort of prominence in the data sets as unexplored. But we did have a suite of projects around Australia, so we were picking up, actively accumulating sort of land packages around Australia during the cyclical low in commodities in 17, 18, 19. And there was lots of vacant ground. So that's obviously, part of the recipe here as well, is that the ground actually needed to be vacant, and we were fortunate that it was vacant. And we actually, sort of a bit funnily, we announced the staking of the project in May 2018, and it was actually the secondary sort of emphasis of that ASX release. The primary emphasis of that release was a vanadium project in Queensland, and I think that just demonstrates sort of when things start from very, very humble beginnings in sort of frontier exploration, you're never sure where the discovery is going to come from necessarily. We knew it had merit, but at that time, we were almost solely focused, and we were sort of the market focus was very much on our large land package in Victoria. So I think it was from very, very humble beginnings and very humble sort of introduction to the market that we sort of kicked off the project. So I'll hand over to Morgan now, who can sort of talk to the lead up and talk to the thing that everyone's sort of no doubt coming in here to tuning in to listen to. So let me just bring that up. Over to you, Morgan.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. That was a good intro, especially the corporate story. A bit of a disclaimer on what I'm going to talk about. So first, I'm French. I like to speak fast, and I'm fully unscripted. So you might going to struggle to understand everything. And so yeah, sorry about that. The slides, I haven't worked for Chalice for over 6 years. So the slides are actually, I've been puzzled if should I ask Chalice to give me the data again, and I revisit, especially with the new data, I revisit the whole story, or I just leave it to the reports I've made back then, and just make the true story based on that. And I opted for the second option because I think this is more genuine for you guys to know exactly which slides were done and presented at the time, and which narrative and story what was going on. And this is really what this slide deck is about. It's about the true chronology and the narrative of the discovery. And if you want to know more about where is Chalice mining up to today with Gonneville and the intricacy of the geology of this system, there's Kevin Frost that presented that talk for the Raglan drilling in Kalgoorlie. So you can go to YouTube and watch that. That presents the Tony Crawford, Harry Medley, and Matt Demmer's work and the team in general. It's a good piece of work. And then you have Matt Demmer that is currently working on a PhD for Chalice mining, and publication are coming up. So you will have heaps. If you're a geological purist and you want to have more geological insight, just go to those to work. So for people that are a bit in a rush and wants to go back to their task, well, all you need to remember is this slide. That's the 5 steps really that led us to discovery. In January 2018, there was a concept and a tenement application. It took us a year to go on the ground, and we did some field recce and orientation survey. Followed up quickly after that by moving OPM, and even more rapidly some auger and saws over the moving OPM plates. And then 10 months later, the company was in a position to drill test those moving OPM targets, and that was a discovery. So that's it. If you want to stop it there, you can stop there. There is a lot of other steps that goes in between, as most of exploration, especially in Australia, will know. And I'm just going to zoom in on those steps, those particular steps that were critical for the discovery. So I will start with the geological concept and the tenement application. To contextualize, I need to tell you a little bit about myself. Before the discovery of Gonneville, I had 10 years exploration experience, mostly, if not everything, with Independence Group, a company that was founded and led by Chris Bonwick. And that was later renamed and rebranded as IGO. But what I want to show you is, and this image speaks 1,000 words. This is a gravity image of the WA, and I just shown in this. Do you see my mouse? Yeah. So I just highlighted roughly the Pilbara Craton and the Yilgarn Craton, and the message here is really Craton margin, and that's what Independence Group was really focusing on. Independence Group was very successful with the Tropicana discovery in the Albany-Fraser belt. And that was already led by Brett Keeler, chasing inlier, arcing inlier on the edge of the Yilgarn Craton. And later on, we did the same story, led by Brett Keeler, and with Kim Revington, we made a discovery, and I was one of the rig jockey on that team that were part of the discovery of the Karwinda gold deposit, which was originally targeted by Western Mining for nickel sulfides. They were targeting nickel sulfides on the Pilbara Craton margin, and they missed. They tested the target. It was a fail. They kept drilling and pushing the hole to the basement and found gold, which was a Frankopan prospect. Then BHP took over Western Mining, and they were not interested in gold. So Brett Keeler pushed IGO Independence Group to actually take that project, and then we made Brett Keeler and Kim Revington made the Karwinda Bibra gold discovery. And then later on, for me, another important point at IGO and Independence Group was the takeover of Sirius Resources. So Mark Bennett imported that mafic or trimafic intrusion model, or actually boosted that model to Australia with a Voisey's Bay analog. But as I pointed out, Western Mining was already applying that concept as well. But at IGO at the time, we were really focusing on komatiite style nickel sulfides. We actually made a discovery, and I was again a rig jockey on that discovery, the Rosie deposit in the Duketon Belt. And that really switched us from komatiite nickel exploration to more those craton margin, mafic, ultramafic. And this is where really that concept of exploring around craton margin was really boosted. So where did Gonneville started? It started on that day. I don't know if some of the old people around remember that TV show called 24 Hours, which was a full season was within 24 hours, was pretty much happening through a 24 hours period. Well, everything started on this moment. At IGO, I was working with a geophysicist called Jacob Paggi. You'll see his name coming back. He taught me to check ASX release every day. So every day, every single day, it sounds boring, but I spend half an hour of my day looking at all the highlights or important ASX release. And on that day, Cassini Resources made a deal with a prospector to acquire the Yarwunda Brook project, which had a non-geo compliant PGE resource, but it was staked for nickel copper occurrences at the start. And I really found that very interesting. And this is where my brain straight away start clicking. So that's really the eureka moment. Straight away, as every geologist do, we go on a portal. It could be a 2D software or portal. We have in WA a portal called GeoView, which is very powerful, very useful. And quickly, I pointed out where Yarwunda is, and I could see this wormy mag feature in this obviously very cluttered and very complex magnetic image. But I could see it was a much stronger and an interesting large series of lineaments than south of that. And that was pseudo-vacant because we had an Alcoa mineral lease, and potentially that scared people off, but it was pretty much vacant for me. And then when you're looking at the gravity, even though it was very coarse, it was a very discrete gravity anomaly supporting that mag anomaly. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Then looking at larger structural lineaments, and you see those northwest features in the southwest terrain, which is very common. Everybody knows about them, even though they were poorly interpreted at that time. So the GSW are not very active in the southwest terrain. But I could see that we're very close to the intersection between a Yilgarn craton margin and a Slugon order northwest structure. So that was, in terms of porosity and permeability to the crust, I was pretty interested. So then I move into my own software, and you play with all the data sets as every geologist do. I put some gravity worms there. I use the earthquakes. So here's the earthquakes by depth. So to map deep structures. I remember the GSWA was data sets and interpretation were very poor. So you had to actually use every data set possible to actually confirm that you had some sort of genuine mental tapping structures, right? So that's the sort of data set I used. And here on the right-hand side, you have all those colorful dots, high chrome values in laterite sampling done by the CRC LEAM program. So that was, again, showing us between the gravity and the chrome values, you had indication that you had a large igneous province. You had mafic rocks. Because the GSWA had all these mapped as pretty much granites, which didn't make sense, you know, so just there was something wrong there. So the model and quickly the thinking was that we had a large igneous province. Potentially, we had a significant layered intrusion because we had Yarwunda Brook, which was tens of kilometers further north. And the idea was we knew we had some titanium vanadium occurrences. We had the Coates titanium vanadium deposit to the south. We had the Alcoa that we're doing a non-geo compliant resource drill out onto the north back in the days. But the idea was using a very simplistic model. It's exactly that image I used originally was, okay, we have a fractionated part, which will be potentially the upper part of this layered intrusion, but we need to target the bottom part, obviously the more primitive component of it, to test massive sulfides and nickel. And this is where that little mag blob here became the focus, because it was where we had this gravity anomaly coincidental with this mag anomaly on a major northwest feature and close to the craton margin. So this needed to be tested. So straight away we pegged, put an application to peg the ground, went to Kevin Frost, and immediately we went to Tim Gorda. Tim Gorda, amazingly supportive. So he was straight away, go for it. So you got the actual file, I actually found that file, which was the original application. And as you can see by the name, it was really the Cassini-Nickel follow-up. And that was done in the same day in the afternoon. So on the same day, I actually found we pegged some gold ground in Victoria. So we're very actively pegging at a time and moving forward. So, so in a nutshell, Trinidad got pegged pretty much within 24 hours, a little bit more because the government takes a little bit of time to get it through the system. And then we had to rejig a couple of tenements to make it fit with the state forest. But that was very fast. Now, people have been asking the company which data sets we used for the pegging, right? So I've put in bold the main data set that were critical in that pegging. Obviously, ASX and the Mindex data sets from the government. Mindex is all the occurrences. A bit of WAMEX as well. You always do those quick WAMEX research. That's how you found Arcoa. We're drilling for titanium, vanadium, and some explorers were there and confirmed it was mafic ultramafic rocks. But it was really original gravity, magnetic, and earthquake data sets at a bigger scale that were useful to target. And definitely a mineral system approach was applied in the thinking and in the model conceptualization. So a year went on. That's a long time before you get on the ground. You have to bear in mind we're doing a lot of things. So a lot of things happened in between. Pretty minor in terms of tenements, but until the tenements get granted, it got granted in August, September. So until you get that granted, you cannot go on the ground. But we were not doing nothing. So we did a lot of activities. So first, obviously, open file review. In the open file review, we found some explorer had exactly the same tenure that we've pegged. In fact, we pegged to match that tenure. And that was only a few years before we actually, they dropped the ground just a few years before we pegged it. And the conclusion was that the lack of significant results suggests that there was unlikely to contain a significant deposit. Now, I kind of disagree with that conclusion because in the drilling they have done in the state forest, I've done all those slides are actually original slides, right? So I didn't make them nicer or anything. You can see the tag in 2017. But I already identified was a weakly mineralized gabbro, which for me was prospective for novolite target. The ratio nickel copper was 2:1. It was not highly elevated, but it was enough pregnancy in the results to actually give a hint of potential sulfur saturation in the rock. We had also the subsea floor horizon with a BIF. If people know Roy Woodall, he's always been advocating for subsea floor horizons. So we also had sulfides, sulfidic sediments mapped in the drilling as well. So we had all the ingredients to make it work. It just you have to find the sweet spot. The GSWA work was pretty poor. As you can see with this map, everything was logged as granite. So we had to go against what was mapped. Or what was actually interpreted as by the GSWA. Since then, since the discovery of Gonneville and potentially because of COVID, GSWA or the Western Australian Survey has done a great work in the Southwest terrain, and we have now an amazing amount of data and revision of all this work has been done by Rafael Cantano-Gomar and his team. So this has been corrected, but at that time we had to deal with that. And as Alex has mentioned, Dreamer was just one of the many projects we had, and also, and by far the flagship project. Definitely, we had other projects that were taking our attention, but we were doing a lot of BD. So in this case, we're doing also some placements in some company. We had 30 million on the bank. So we're actually always reviewing and screening projects to invest and or take on. This kept us busy for that year. We obviously met with the farmers. I've got a little anecdote with some of the farmers. We're so close to Perth that I actually stumbled into one of the farmer when I was doing my shopping for the grocery in Midlands. So that's just to tell you how close we are from Perth to Gonneville and Julimar project. And more importantly, in that year, we did the strategy and the budgeting, right? So I put a few slides, but obviously I'm not going to present everything, but put a few slides there to show you that we did a lot of mineral system thinking and targeting. I was quite pleased to see that in my original thinking for the large igneous province, I had a 2.8 billion year, which ended up 2.664 for Gonneville. So I was not far off. And the supercontinent breakup interpretation was probably not far off the truth. Obviously, people will argue, well, you're in Archie and Yilgarn Craton, so you know that you're not taking too many big risks in that. I agree, but there's always please, in hindsight and later on when you're looking at the back mirror, you're always good to see that you had the right thinking. So the strategy was very important. Why? Like Roy Woodall, I put some quotes on the top here. The Roy Woodall one that I really like is a discoverer is someone who sees what everyone else sees, but thinks what no one else has thought before, which was taken from another guy, the guy that actually discovered the vitamin C, Albert St. Georgi. Discovery consists of saying what everybody has seen and thinking what nobody has thought. So why do I say that? It's because at that time, we had a GSW that tells us it's granite. And we had a prospector, an explorer that just explored the area and they even did drilling and says, well, there's unlikely anything there. So you have to come up with a new idea. If you rock up and take the same ground into an area that is not seen as fertile, you have to think differently. So what we knew was we had a very large lead intrusion, 26 by 7K, it's huge. Now we had to focus. So I have selected 4 areas, as you can see, those little squares there in that box. I selected 4 areas to focus our attention, based mostly on the more dynamic and more complex area of the lead intrusion, something that could trap or something that could change the velocity or the speed and potentially drop sulfide. So very basic thinking. We had an underexplored area, like I talked about. And we had to go and explore. So we had 2 commodities we were considering at a time. Vanadium was very hot at the time. So we were, when I did propose to the board some expenditure, which you see in this diagram, there was some activities that were for targeting titanium vanadium and some for nickel sulfides. We end up spending less than half of this amount, which is 1 NTK was already proposed before we go into drilling stage. Why is that? Is because we dropped all this titanium vanadium exploration and we just went straight to Grand EM and a bit of exploration geochem, which is what we're going to talk about now. So we're a year later, we're in January 2019, and we're just starting to get on the ground. So the plan was to do a bit of a field recce and the orientation survey. The objectives were to meet with some of the landowners on site, was to identify mafic or tremafic rocks, because as far as we're concerned, it was all granites. And test 3 position. We're going to talk about 2, but it was really testing a fractionated vanadium titanium rich portion and testing the interpreted or targeted nickel copper primitive feeder, which was this mag anomaly over the gravity anomaly. So this is the land at the time. So you can see a bit of a cover. It's all laterite cover. Obviously, a few grazing pasture. So a bit of paddocks and a bit of native vegetation. I didn't take a photo, but there's a big bull behind over there that was a bit intimidating. So done the sampling. I've done the sampling. I swagged over there and done the sampling. And then the results back. The sampling of the orientation survey was a mix of lag and soils. So I took different fraction, I did different finish to see which technique was the best. First was on line 1, which is the most primitive, the one that we're targeting for massive sulfide. This is line 1 here. This is that where it's located. I just put here some diagram that shows vanadium, titanium on top and copper and nickel at the bottom. It's an east-west line across the targeted mag gravity anomaly. What we were expecting before the results was we should have high nickel copper value and chalcophiles and so on, and lower titanium vanadium, or at least lower than the other line. And that's what we got pretty much. So very low, no signal and no strong anomaly in titanium, vanadium, but we have 3 to 10 times background in nickel and copper, and very sharp signal to noise ratio. So pretty pleased with that. If you compare it to the other line, the line to the north, that had some drilling by Alcoa. I put the drilling here. You can see the drill holes from Alcoa. And we have the same vanadium, titanium at the top, and the copper, nickel at the bottom. And we had a pretty weak, moderate vanadium anomaly. Not much of a titanium anomaly, probably because of the angle of the line. That was a north-south line, that one. But no signal for copper and nickel. Very noisy, as you can see, and the values are very low. The scale, be careful with the scale. Don't be thrown out by the scale. It's very low. So it validates that this area was prospective for vanadium, titanium, especially vanadium, but not so much for nickel, copper. I'll just put a bit of a bonus point here. There's obviously other elements. We analyzed all of the elements. I just picked up some. So this is the PGEs and the chrome for line 1 at the top and line 3 at the bottom. And you can see, especially the numbers, the chrome values are, in order of 10, so it's not even comparable. So very much more primitive, high chrome, high PGs, very much more primitive where we were in a line 1 versus line 3. I just had it on top, the Gonneville open pit, proposed open pit with some of the mineralization, and see where the sample point sits. So you can have a bit of a visual of where the peak anomaly we're sitting. So at that time, we concluded that the geological model and the target was validated, and we could go to the next stage. The survey, we did a lot of more work on the samples just to assess which sample media was the best. The best was by far the lags. However, the lags demands you go and crush and pulverize and then get and wait for assays. So I did found that a sieve fraction with the PXRF finish was quite good. The PXRF correlation with the aquaregia, which you see quickly on this diagram, shown a very good correlation. So that's the approach we went for the next stage. We obviously had some aquaregia confirmation required, but we were happy with going this. We had immediate results, and it was cheap and it was rapid. I say the little outcrop of mafic or trimafic, really small subcrop of dorite, and it put up in the gabbro dorite field, which we're pretty happy as well. So we also found these rocks. It was a couple of rocks that we found on the site that's showing that this area was not granites. It had mafic or trimafic rocks, which was seen in the drilling by the previous explorer, but also by the field observation. So 3 months later, we were confident and ready to get a moving OPM crew commissioned and appointed to get some work done. The moving OPM survey was designed by Armada Exploration Services, Jacob Hadji. So the same guy that put me onto the ASX, good friend of mine. He designed the survey. We went with 200 meters lines, 350 meters station. It was really a week survey, very short, 1 week. It's very cheap at the time. Now, I'm not a geophysicist, so I'm not going to insult the field. And if you want to read more, if you want to dig deeper on that, there's a paper published by Jacob, Kevin, and Bruce. So go for it, help yourself, read it, but I won't talk about it. What we got out of the survey, though, is we had a series of plates, which you have here, 8 plates, which are showing on this map over the mag anomaly. But we had 2 in particular that were very strong. A 12,000 Siemens plate here, and a 5,000 one. The 12,000 Siemens was obviously the tantalizing one because it was high conductance, it wins more than 10,000, you think massive sulfides. But it was also, and more importantly, short strike. So it was very short and small. So that's also a very good indication to not being stratigraphy related. This one was a bit more borderline. At that time, we were ready to design a drill program. So a drill program was already designed with those plates. I've just put a little photo here. We're in an area north of Perth where we have a disease, a pathogen called dieback, which kills the vegetation, and you have to actually manage that. So this is some of the early work we've done. Obviously, we're cleaning the vehicles, but we're also cleaning the shoes and everything. So this is some of the material I was buying at Bunnings, and you can see my office shoes here. So just to tell you how close we were, I was actually dropping this off, instructing and overseeing the moving OPM crew, and then I was going back to work in the office. So that's just to tells you a lot about the unique settings where we were at the time. So this is where we decided, okay, we have anomalous plates. We're in a right place. We have the right target, but we need to continue de-risking the project. And we decided to do some further soils over the EM plates just to make sure that we're dealing with a fertile nickel copper system. Oops. And this is where we were out. So we got this got a good friend of mine, my first job, my first boss actually in Australia. It was a geologist, and he decided to do auger drilling. That's his name, Mike Mora. Got a fantastic little rig, and we got him to test and do those drill holes and soil samples on the paddocks because we're dealing with paddocks and native vegetation. You remember? So we had to do a bit of an hybrid system. In native vegetation, it was soils, and in the paddocks, we had to dig a little bit deeper. This is the 3 holes that were designed at the time. So we had a short hole testing the high conductance plane, and a couple of other holes testing the high priority plates with those 3 plates. And we got Mike to do the sampling. So you can see the auger versus soil samples. So it was not ideal, but we had to do with what we had. We did an 80 mesh source fraction, mostly because the finer fraction, which was better, was taking too much time to do. So we just end up taking that fraction and do a PXRF finish on that. So you can see the samples I got back from Mike, and this is me, my setup to do the readings, compacted a little bit, put us through the mile of film, and then do the reading. Now we had some anomalism straight away. You have an oblique view here of those 2 panels. We had the northern plates and the southern plates. And we had a strong nickel copper coincidental anomaly, especially in the southern area. But at that time, because you're in a farm and close to Perth, you're always thinking about contamination and potential artifacts or false anomaly. So in this case, we were pretty reassured by the fact that the anomaly was upslope to the road. There's a little road going through, so it was not rod-based contamination. And also over there, it was a pretty pristine area, pretty flat and sandy, and there was no cultural man-made sheds or buildings or anything. So we were confident that the response was genuine coming from the ground. So here I put a slide from the leveling that I've done. Why did I did some leveling? Well, I told you we were dealing with auger and soils. And also we were dealing with a lot of iron. So I did a bit of iron work, I did some normalization to iron. I did the leveling. I obviously look at the data raw, but here I just decided to pick up one slide. It was a leveling slide. So we had some strong nickel and copper anomaly. It goes up to 1800 ppm copper and almost 700 ppm nickel, all in this southern panel. Remember that southern panel was over the high conductance 12,000 Siemens plates. So we start to be kind of excited at the moment, obviously, when you start to tick all the boxes. And even though we had some contrasting issue with the iron, and potentially it was still this risk of an iron scavenging and enrichment, supergene enrichment effect, it was quite clear, and you have my comment here on that report, that it is recommended to complete a small RC program as soon as possible. So yeah, that's a nickel and copper here, and level on the top with the Z method and Z score method, and then the nickel copper raw value at the bottom. 10 months later, time to get the approvals through. Well, this is probably what every geologist dreams about. I think, Jessica, you asked about highlight of a career. I was unlucky to not be on that rig that day, but I felt that moment when I was at Rosie, and when you're painting gold at Karwinda, you feel the same moment. It's always been the highlight of my career, was this kind of moments. And in this case, a lucky guy was Henry Steger. That's the lucky charm of the company. He's the one that witnessed all this, saw those black smoke coming out of the cyclone, those black heavy bags coming out. That's really unbelievable. Beautiful day, typical Perth day, and yeah, that was lucky charm, Henry Steger. The results coming out of those bags confirm that it was something significant. As the slide says, the discovery was made in the very first drill hole, and it's a very cheap cost discovery for that one. And yeah, the numbers: 9 gram PGEs, 2.6% nickel, 1% copper, cobalt, etc. And the first hole, the discovery hole, was on that high conductance short plate. They went straight away into the northern one. At the time, they were not sure it was mineralized. It was hard to recognize, but the results, even though they were lower grade, shown that it was all fertile. And then they checked that other plate, that third plate that we talked about, that was a priority, and had the same results. So in conclusion, it's a simple story, obviously, but for me, the conclusion for the company is that the board and the management, the upper management, was fantastic. Tim Gorder's support and Alex Dorsch was instrumental. Once we had an ID, it was very easy to peg. You've seen the pegging within 24 hours. That's sort of thinking and rapidity. And I think in exploration, you need to have that speed and of movement and action. So that was key. The change in the strategy, which was going from advanced assets like Alex presented with Tim Gorder, going from looking at advanced gold asset and selling them and drilling them and selling them afterwards. That changed to go to more greenfield, and exploration was a clear pivot for Chalice Mining. And we're very aggressive in exploring. I mean, this is one project, but we had like a constellation of projects. I think having a balanced portfolio and rapid turnover is key to be successful. We had a very lean team. We had no fieldies. We had 3 field geos, you know, the 2 seniors, including myself and the project geo, Henry Steger, as you've seen. And we had an exploration manager. And that was it, you know, like no fieldies, no other people. Like obviously we had some accountants and we had Alex but that was a very lean, very small team. And even then we had done a lot. I mean, the M&A part, it's an extraordinary success story. I mean, we could do a talk on the M&A story of Chalice. Chalice was funding exploration through astute investment and always getting their money back and even get money, keeping that $30 million cash fund we had, which allowed for exploration to happen. We could almost do a talk on that. That was pretty fantastic. This is something I found very important, is fit for purpose stage exploration. Yes, I mean, I personally found this discovery story very simple and there's nothing special. But systematic exploration, and I've been to a lot of companies, and unfortunately, it's getting rarer and rarer. A lot of companies, especially the one that has most of the funds and most of the money, they want to take shortcuts, and they forgot that following the steps to de-risk the project before you go drilling is very important. So even though for me it's not rocket science, or some people say rock science, I think this is important to remember that. And thinking outside the box. I mean, I mentioned before, this area was explored by somebody else, and they said that it was nothing there and move on. And there's no significant deposits. You have to think outside the box, so you need to create a new search space in order to mature terrain. And to illustrate that, I've just shown the distance between Perth and the project, which is an hour drive, 45 minutes. I think Jessica, yeah. I don't know who does that, but yeah, it's pretty fast. But if I asked ChatGPT to tell me which capital city in the world has the most geologists, and they come up with Perth. I think Perth has, because of a flying fly-out system, we have one of the highest density of geologists per kilometer square in the world. And we are one of the states, as you can see in the other diagram, and one of the states that spend the most money year on year in the region. So it's easy to think, well, okay, there's nothing to be seen there. Obviously, people will have walked the ground. People will have already assessed the ground, move on. And so that's what my message for, especially the younger talent, the younger geologists, is like, don't don't take everything as gospel truth, especially coming from older fart like myself now. I'm probably going into this category of older fart. Just always challenge preconceived ideas and challenge the thoughts that people had before you or in front of you. And I will just conclude with my learning. So obviously, don't walk away until the target is drill tested. And I did that mistake. So I should have, after I did the drill program, I should have stayed on for a few months to be on the rig. Keep taking photos. A mate of mine, like Gorod, actually put that in one of his presentations one day, and I realized when doing that presentation that I did not take as many photos as I should have taken. I mean, I swagged over there and everything, but I didn't take any photos. So that was a bit sad. I think with time we're becoming complacent. Relationship matters. I mean, I've dropped a few names, and there was not too. I know people don't know those names: Jacob, Mike, Graham, Henry, Alex, Akuse, Kevin, obviously Matt, and Bruce. But that was on purpose. I think being kind and collaborating, having friends, using friends, and that build trust and give you into a confidence that you will do the right thing, and people will be challenging you, giving you ideas as you go because you have built those relationships. So I think this is very important, and that story illustrates that very well. And again, this little diagram, I love it. Good, fast, and cheap. The discovery of Dreamer was really in a good and cheap. It wasn't fast. It took 2 years from the pegging because we were very busy and we had a lot of things going on. Plus, we were dealing with tenements conditions, and we had to respect a certain rhythm going on with landowners, and we have a social license to respect, and so. But what was important is to follow each steps. We follow each steps. We didn't go grand EM and go straight drilling. We could have done that and be as successful for sure. But I think you want to de-risk the project at each stage. So think first and drill after. That's my motto. Tim Gordon likes to say peg first and think after. but I prefer to think first and drill after. And yeah, so this is us. This is the car I've used to go on site. This is the entrance to the project. This is a jackalope farm. And this is my kids chasing bipyramid quartz in the rock base. There's beautiful bipyramid quartz to hunt. Very good specimen there. So I don't know if there is much left now because they've been picking up a lot. Some are excited, some are not. Yeah, that's the story.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Very well presented. So thank you for sharing that, the both of you.